how the Prince and Princess of Wales spent their Easter Sunday.
And Meghan Markle caught up in another plagiarism row. Welcome to Heirs and Spares, the show that dives into the fascinating world of two of the most recognized royal couples on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle right here in sunny California.
Hi, I'm Rupert and I'll have all the latest news on what's going on in the world of the Prince and Princess of Wales.
I love it, Rupert. It was a quiet Easter when it came to the Prince and Princess of Wales. Tongues were wagging primarily over the fact that it was Prince Andrew and Fergie that attended church with King Charles and Queen Camilla at Windsor. But we didn't hear anything about what Prince William and Catherine were up to. The real story being that their lack of presence was felt. First of all, I guess I'd say, do you have an opinion on Prince Andrew being there? Do you think that should be the story that it's become? And then we'll kind of get into Prince William and Catherine.
Whenever he's seen in public with the family, when it comes to Prince Andrew, there's always going to be a degree of fascination. Now, this is a family get-together. Now, he is still in the family. And bearing in mind, he had his ex-wife, or they lived together. And as she said, it's the happiest divorced couple that's ever been out there. But then they also had their children there as well. So it's a family affair. Because not only that, we saw Prince Edward, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. We saw Princess Anne and her husband. So it was a family get together for Easter. So nothing unusual about that. We just have to somehow just move away. What I suppose gets irritating is when people see him grinning and looking like the cat that's got the cream, and that he's back on the royal stage. That's not the point. They're going to celebrate one of the holy days in the Christian calendar. They get together as a family with the king in his role as head of the Anglican Church. That is an important occasion. So I'm not going to read too much of it, but inevitably, whenever he is in town, in a sort of semi-private stroke public occasion like that was, people are always going to focus on him being brought back into the fold. But no, it's only a temporary return to public viewing.
I feel like I'm always the loudest person to say you are who you associate with, and that the king needs to be careful because Prince Andrew is so problematic in my eyes. But the reality is he's never been found guilty by a jury or a judge of anything that he's been accused of. And we also have to acknowledge that, like, if you are dealing with stuff, or if you're not on the right path, isn't the best place to be church? Isn't the best place or isn't the best thing to be doing it chasing God, chasing faith? So I totally understand both arguments, but at the end of the day, I would say maybe church is the only place he should be right now. Maybe we should be celebrating the fact that he's right where he's supposed to be.
Well, yes, I think it is right that he goes to church. He's still involved in the family. I'm sure, every headline's about him linked with various Chinese organizations and everything just creates the odd headache for the king and the rest of the family. But in that occasion, it was a family affair, and, with all the other members. So I think you have to rise above it and just say it's good that he's going to church and seen going to church. And just take up your theme, presumably asking for forgiveness somewhere along the line.
Do we have any idea where Prince William and Catherine were today? I mean, we're recording this on Easter, by the way.
Yeah, well, I have to say, we believe they were at Amner Hall because they're completing, I imagine the children will go back to school soon. And it's the end. They've obviously been skiing. We obviously saw William and George back at the football on Tuesday night when my team won epically 3-2, but still got booted out of the Champions League. And they had a great night. We all had a great night. So he went to that. But the point it being is, now, I do not know for a fact whether he did or didn't go to church. But I'm just going to put it out there in terms of his constitutional role. He is the future head of the Anglican Church, as the king is now. It will become that will become one of his duties. Would it have not been possible, just like we saw the king and the queen and other members of the royal family at Windsor Castle, when you think back to Christmas, Kinsey, we all see them trolling off to Sandringham Church, lots of people come along, go along, just even a quiet photograph of him going to church with his family, maybe without making song and dance of it, maybe after the occasional something. Now, there may be after we see something that he may have gone. But I do think sometimes if he's with his family, going to church is a family affair, just as we saw the rest of the family doing. Would it not be just to put something out there? Maybe the Princess of Wales, she doesn't have to go, but perhaps, no, he goes to Aston Villa, right? And we see him there, and that's private. But what about going and just doing something that has a constitutional relevance? Just going while enjoying a holiday, just taking time out for an Easter morning service to be seen at. Now, he may have gone, and I may have got it wrong, and I'm happy to be proved wrong. But I just think it is something that occasionally, within the family confines, going to church might have been seen as a good signal that I'm not the rest of the family, but here I am fulfilling some of my obligations as the future king.
Do you think ever that he's trying to take advantage of every second he's not king?
I don't blame him,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got to be, he's got to be eased into the role. And yes, once you become king, then your private time is very precious. And I know with his children at that still very young age, and changing school time, they're still, approaching their teenage years and all that. So I can understand, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there would have been lots of families who would have been taking their time out today to go to church on Easter Sunday. And maybe if you're the future head of that church, perhaps you should have gone. Now, as I say, he may have gone and they just didn't have any photographs. But as I say, that it wouldn't have probably been too difficult just to put something out on social media with a quick picture of them going into the local church.
Yeah, just I understand what you're saying. I do get the sense, though, that he's like, I'm not going to do anything until I absolutely have to, because I just want my freedom. I want every second of it.
I'm being, in a way, but he still has a job.
Yeah.
And his job is the future king.
You're right.
Now, it's great that he's doing Earthshot, and obviously we may come on to the fact that Jason Knopf has been appointed in charge of Earthshot. That's an interesting appointment, and he's got lots of things that he's involved in. So he has plenty of responsibilities, but this is the juggling act of his family and his job, which, okay, he is born into his job, one of Harry's beef, he has no choice, but he's got to just sometimes, maybe occasionally, just see if there's something that you can do to just get the balance maybe seen to be right. I may be overreacting, overthinking it, but I absolutely agree with him. He does need to make sure he has every opportunity of enjoying maximum parenting time with his children, but he also has a job like so many other people out there, of course.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Jason Knopf. Let me ask you about that really quickly. Has been promoted. So we know that the person that he's replacing had been in, I believe it was a female, her position for about 6 years, leaving on good terms. I received an email from an outlet that I have beef with because they reported that Meghan Markle sent the king a jam basket. And I said, that's absolutely not true. And they reported it anyway. And then everybody else reported it, even though I said, this is not true. This is not accurate. So that same outlet messaged me asking me about this Jason Knopf promotion and trying to stir the pot with Harry and Meghan. And I said, you know what? I just think that this guy is truly great at his job. Clearly has proven himself to be a loyal individual. And this has nothing to do with taking on Harry and Meghan. When you give this guy a different job title, I think it's just like, I enjoy working with this person. There's a great rapport here. promotion. I trust you.
Yeah, and this role is something that William values more than the homelessness and Earthshot are his two big projects, and he needs a big hitter to help him run it. And he is, in royal terms, a big hitter. He's very experienced, obviously, and I think the most important point is, William and he get on extremely well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be having the job because he's got to trust this person to carry out his vision. And presumably, Jason Ganoff has been working with the king on this anyway and helping him of the
Future
communication of the future king. Yep, sorry, we got a bit ahead of ourselves, but the future king working on this. So yeah, we don't want to send alarm bells. Anyway, no. But most importantly, I think it is a very sensible appointment. But of course, it's easy to look into and say, well, this is, the person who brought out the bullying allegations. He knows what's been going on, but he's loyal to William and will continue to be incredibly loyal. And Earthshot will benefit from his expertise. And the previous incumbent, she did a great job. And after 6 years, she probably feels it's time to move on, not necessarily completely to pastures news, but to go and do something different. Completely normal. There's no feeling that there was something controversial going on in the background.
Right. And you don't see the churn that you see with Harry and Meghan's charities and charity employees. Speaking of which, I didn't see a lot of chatter about this. And that surprised me, although the news cycle has moved so quickly that maybe people just don't want to discuss Sentebale anymore. But a man claiming to be Sentebale co-founder Prince Seiso's brother blasted Prince Harry for not visiting Lesotho more often in recent years. He told the Telegraph on Wednesday, when Sentebale was launched, I remember his words quite vividly because he was very strong in saying, my mother, this place, her passion about Africa and all that. He's a loved figure because of his openness, but his loss of interest has totally killed the spirit of the Sentebale charity, of their survival. He continued, I haven't seen Harry since he got himself married, which is a pretty savage. I think that's what led to the headline, specifically, Prince Harry lost interest in Sentebale charity after marrying Meghan Markle, which is a pretty bold headline. They talk about how Prince Harry's most recent visit was in October of 2024, and we know that Dr. Sophie Chandaka specifically requested that. And then he also said that he was perturbed to see Harry and Meghan visit Africa after they got together in 2016 without stopping to visit the charity. That's pretty damning to have this coming from the brother of the co-founder.
Well, it isn't part of the allegation that why she wanted to move, Dr. Sophie wanted to move everything within Africa, is it's an African charity, but has felt that Prince Harry has, by leaving the royal family, has had an impact on the Sentebale charity's ability to raise funds because of they're no longer in the royal family. The sort of mudslinging that has been coming out from them over the years has created problems for their image and people wanting to associate with them. So it adds, obviously, you would trust the Telegraph presumably to have got it right. You can't suddenly start be quoting to the extent that this person was quoted if that's what he didn't feel. And you do look that Harry has not been going to Africa like he used to. He does feel like he's sort of changed and wants to only concentrate on raising money when it's about polo, which is about as tone deaf as it possibly can be when it comes to trying to look like you're trying to help. It has a sort of imperialist overthrow that polo, is a sort of white man's playing thing. And look at us, we're doing a great thing for the people of Africa, which is a throwback to days gone by. So it is something, if it was done properly, then yes, but you felt that even with the polo, that was a sort of undercurrent of PR opportunities. And we've seen, the allegations that Meghan wanted Harry insisted on some sort of PR apology for Meghan from Dr. Sophie Chandaka, which led to the breakdown of relationship. It's unseemly. That's the problem. And what you're getting from that guy is further evidence of an unseemly breakdown of relations, which has had a serious impact on the Sentebale charity and presumably its ability to raise funds.
Well, you're right. Dr. Sophie specifically says that she struggled in fundraising because people had questions about Prince Harry. They would immediately start asking about his status as a royal and some of the recent headlines involving him, which is typically drama related. But I also wonder if it's a struggle to fundraise and using Prince Harry's association with the charity when he hasn't been around for years. So if I'm trying to get you to write a huge check because Prince Harry is associated, are you not looking at the documentation going, but Prince Harry hasn't visited here in 5 years? So technically I'm not really as associated with, so there's two options here. Either his brand is so toxic, which he does say his brand had become toxic, or you do want to associate with Prince Harry, but there is a real lack of emotional investment. Perception is there's a real lack of emotional investment from Prince Harry when he hasn't visited since he married Meghan Markle and ran off to the United States.
I absolutely agree with that, because one of the things is, if you're going to give money, the royal family have to know they have to sort of turn up and do the glad handing.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be his charity, you want heavy hitters, they want to be seen with you. And if it means, right, let's go and show the good work we're doing, you've got to get down and out there and be seen to be out there. And those trips have been conspicuous now by their rarity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the problem for Harry. He does, these charity, yes, he goes to the Invictus Games for every 2 years, and he may be working behind the scenes to make sure that the next one is going to be very relevant. But at the same time, you actually think, if you're going to ask someone to cough up an awful lot of money, a big corporate, and say, support me, then you have to put the time in and be seen. And I'm not sure turning up to a polo match to raise money amongst your friends is not the way, and not necessarily the way that Dr. Sophie Chandorka sees the charity going. So it's all adding, and obviously it'll all come out in the wash in due course, that Harry has made a few missteps when it comes to this charity, and it must be very frustrating for all and sundry. But as I say, we may get news of the results in due course, but our reading so far suggests it's not all gone the way that Harry and Meghan would have liked.
Well, somebody that is going to agree with you there is Tom Bower, and it sounds like we can look forward to new material from the royal author soon. Now, he says Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are in a crisis as she has not achieved the status she craves, which is something you've said. You've worded it differently, but we've certainly had a similar discussion on this program. Bower alleges that the duo are constantly fighting for themselves, describing them as relentless. I use that word quite often when talking about Meghan Markle, and restless. I feel like that's a great word to describe these two. So sometimes when I look at everything they're trying to do all at once, especially in 2025, restless and relentless is certainly two words that I would use, but also this anxiety. It feels like this anxiousness, like fame is fleeting. They see that the fame is fleeting, so they've got to throw everything out there all at once. Now, Bower says that Prince Harry doesn't understand where Meghan's coming from, which is that she worked phenomenally hard, struggled hard, and was constantly humiliated, and wants the security of finance and status. She hasn't got the status she craves. She hasn't got the pulling power. He's stuck in California, clinging on to his royal status, as is she. Isn't that the truth? Bower claimed reconciliation between Harry and his family was totally unrealistic, saying that there is a zero chance of reconciliation because Prince William and Catherine are so angry about what's taken place over the last few years. He also alleges that while the pair have been wounded, Harry and Meghan, they continue to fight back with their desire for survival continuing to grow. A lot of some of the kind of comments we've made on this program, did any of those statements, do you agree or disagree with any of those statements?
I think the she's absolutely entitled to work as hard from raising money. It's just unfortunately the way she's going about it, it's given it a tacky feel
Yeah.
because of her insatiable desire to suddenly become a billionaire celebrity, having raising masses of money. And actually, it becomes quite interesting. Again, we sort of alluded to it, the sort of crossroads with Harry feeling, what's he doing? He's sitting out in California, um, wanting to, living off a royal title. But what's he doing? Has he got something that is getting him really going and motivating him? Whereas, you can, whether we like her podcast, like her program, at least she's busy.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't fault her for being busy, just none of it's particularly good. Um, well, second podcast was certainly right up there. Same old, same old. Talk about me again, and then we also, the TV program, and making money out of Shop Me and all this stuff. Absolutely entitled to it, but it's that what he's really implying is the sort of desperate, almost fanatical need for this constant affirmation of just how brilliant she is. And actually, at the moment, she needs to take stock and say, well, everything, I'm doing all this stuff and I've been given the opportunity, but is it any good? But trouble is, no one can tell her
Mm-hmm.
because she
Yeah.
thinks she's an absolute genius. And
Right.
Harry's none the wiser.
Right.
And he's obviously blind. Love is blind. And as a result, she's ploughing her furrow, and he's sort of, I don't know whether he's twiddling his thumbs, but he's just angry and bitter. They've now been married nearly 7 years. We approach what we term the 7-year itch. So, obviously they've been through a lot. And if you look at the 7 years, I mean, it's not been dull,
No, no, no.
but it's just left him now friendless. And yet his wife is
And
trying to lead.
familyless. Don't forget
Oh, friendless and
familyless.
familyless, friendless. That's the problem for him. Meghan's got a rich circle of Uber friends, sort
Hang-ons.
doing fawning at the feet of the Duchess. But Tom Bower is probably right. We've what he's saying is not actually new. It just sort of crystallizes it. I think would be the best way of describing it. We know that from an early age, Meghan has wanted fame. End of. And she's got it, but she's actually having to scramble away in a sort of tacky commercial way and not doing it,
Well,
in my
can
opinion,
I tell you
particularly
what I
well.
think? I think that she achieved fame, and it was the palace's portrait of her. And the palace did an excellent job of painting her as this exquisite, hardworking, sweet girl that came to the rescue of Prince Harry the third wheel. And the palace painted her as this delicate, smart, ambitious young woman. And then the truth came out, and the palace stopped protecting them. And so she was fighting this narrative that she would argue the palace created, but I don't even think she would give the palace the credit for the initial fame that they helped bolster, that they helped to bolster. Like, the only reason we liked her to begin with was because the palace said, look at this gorgeous girl on Prince Harry's arm, we all approve. And then we were like, oh, okay, we approve too. It was all done with whispers. It was all done with sources say that the king is smitten, Prince Charles is smitten with Harry's new girl. It was like little lines like that. Kate Middleton loves Prince Harry's new girl. It was just, one or two sentences from anonymous sources. But all of that stuff was heavily orchestrated to ensure that we accepted Meghan into the fold. And then Meghan's true colors started coming out because she did not read the room, and she just started to behave as herself. And I think that she and Harry tell the public that the palace created this negative narrative, when in reality, I think the palace overdid the charm. There was an overkill of how wonderful she was. And now we see who she really is. And so this chaotic anxiousness of like verbally vomiting and telling us all about herself is because she finally feels like it's her turn to tell us who she is. But we've seen too many different versions and we don't like most of them, so we've checked out.
Well, I mean, but when she came onto the scene, everyone thought happy days for Harry. You
Mhm.
know, he's got something, found somebody who's, got an interesting backstory. Um, but unfortunately, as soon as she moved into the fold, she realized that this is in her world, a very constricting environment, and didn't like the protocols of the way you behave. You go back to the Easter Sunday, you can see exactly how everyone, even that service on Easter Sunday, there was a structure to it. Where you stood, how you went into the church, when you probably exited, everything, in a public viewing for the royal family is staged, and you don't go outside that royal protocol. For Meghan, that was a step too far, because what she wanted was to be standing next to the Queen going, look how wonderful I am. But actually, in reality, the people standing next to the Queen had to be the Princess of Wales, the Prince of Wales, the King, and the now King and Queen, whereas you are just down the pecking order. And
Mhm.
so now she's got the wheels have, well, not come off, but now she's not burdened by that, but she's still living off it. And this is every time, it just irritates the heck out of me, that without her title, these doors would not be opening. If she'd stayed in suits and hadn't married Harry, presumably her Instagram stuff and everything would have been flying. I don't know. And she would have
I
been,
don't think so, because I don't think she's evolved with it. Maybe you're right. Maybe she would have evolved with it, but so many of the social media experts that are commenting on her current activity are like, she is stuck in 2014. She is stuck in 2015. You know, I just refuse to fully engage in it because I am busy talking to you
mm,
almost several times a week. But the real success in social media right now is talking to your phone like this, walking
mm,
around, just talking to your phone without makeup on, not chaos in the background, cars honking,
yeah,
like it's raw, it's real. And Meghan is too glossy and too polished. She was being written off Suits when she started dating Prince Harry. So she was about to be in the unemployment line. You're right. Prince Harry, she hit the jackpot
oh,
with Prince Harry.
that was her lottery win in one, and now
Mhm.
it hasn't worked. And actually, now I was reading, not that I know, but I mean, the sort of young cooks are out there. Everything's a TikTok, and it's sort of, you know, down with the kids, cook it quickly, and just point the camera and go, and people get, millions of subscribers and looking completely natural, engaging with your younger audience. Bearing in mind that those people doing that, they're in their 20 somethings. She's now in her 40s. So she's now, what she was doing 10, 15 years ago was relevant. But as we know, everything has moved on. I can't keep pace with it. I'm barely keeping up to speed with it all, and just sort of floundering away in a sea of confusion about what's relevant. But for people, the Gen Z, the young, they consume everything in 3-minute bite-sized chunks, and that means if you're putting out a 45-minute cooking program about in a sort of ivory, in someone else's villa, probably is not going to resonate with the young who basically want to see it. Right, give me, how can I cook something in 3 minutes, or
Yeah.
what's easy, smashing everything together. you know that's what engages with people. I do feel, is trying to rediscover the key, but unfortunately the people who are doing it really well now are the new ones, and within 5 or 6 years' time, those people might be irrelevant. I don't know, but the world evolves, and I don't think Meghan. Podcasts have changed inexorably now. That's a different vibe.
Hmm.
Everything has to be seen in a different light at all times, and at the moment, um, I'm not entirely convinced. Podcasts. Is there a video version? Every podcast now, just like this, is a video. Why aren't we seeing her interviewing these people? What's the mystery?
Yeah.
Why can't they be videoed sitting in a recording studio, or is it so heavily edited so that they can get away with it? I don't know. Why
Well,
not? I mean,
But and that also
wouldn't
could
that
be
be
an issue.
right?
That also could be an issue with Netflix, because Netflix might want first dibs on anything visual that she does, you know?
Well, you're probably right there. So I mean, I don't know enough, but you know, a podcast being done by somebody else, maybe they should have made sure they got the opportunity to, in their contract, that if I do this, I'm entitled to, because it's
Well, they're her
something.
partners. They're her
Yeah,
partners. Maybe she can go
yeah,
back and have that conversation. Well, speaking of her
yeah.
partners, an author has claimed recently, apparently this happened years ago, but we're just now hearing about it through the Daily Mail. An
Yeah.
author has claimed that Meghan Markle's Pearl was similar to her own work, so much so that she reached out to Meghan and Netflix. And so this was teased at the beginning of the show, Meghan Markle embroiled in another plagiarism dispute. And this is a show that never actually came to fruition and was killed pretty quickly when it
Hmm.
came to Meghan's Netflix deal. But it was announced in the initial Netflix deal that Meghan was going to produce this animated show about a young girl named Pearl, who learns to, quote unquote, step into her power and finds inspiration from influential women throughout history. And the Daily Mail talked to author Mel Elliott, who claims she sent a legal letter to Archewell and Netflix alleging possible infringement of her copyright. Now, she's the author of a series of Pearl Power books, which debuted in 2014, and the third book was actually released in 2016, and it's a similar message where Pearl Power meets, like, is it Billie Jean King? Billie King, is that the tennis player?
Billie Jean King, what a tennis player
Yeah.
she was. Yeah.
So
Yep.
with, powerful woman in history,
Oh,
and
such an icon she is, and what
yes.
she did for women's tennis and everything. She is right. She's a goddess.
Well, she endorsed these books too, and
Yeah.
so now the author says, of course, I can't know if anyone on her team had seen it or was inspired by it, but the similarities were too great for me to ignore. She stressed, the world of arts and media are very competitive, and I'm afraid it's quite common for powerful people to rip off the work of less well-known creatives. Although I'm not saying that's what happened here, what saddened me most is having brought the similarities between my Pearl and Meghan's Pearl to the attention of Netflix and Archewell. My objection was never acknowledged. Neither Netflix nor Archewell responded to me. Well, you know what? Never complain, never explain. Always when it's convenient for them, Rupert. They ignore when it's convenient for them.
Well, yes, and it's once again issues over copyright, even as ever was had issues with some a shop in New York, didn't there, and other, even
A
the
photographer, Confessions of
uh,
a Female Founder already
you
existed.
know, so it's another one. No, we don't know. It's a bit, you talk about, people suddenly say, well, I wrote that song, which turns out to be a hit, but
Well,
actually,
these were
y-
published books that
yeah,
were published before Meghan had this deal with
and
Netflix. I think it's a fair argument that Meghan Markle does not do her due diligence based on these
oh,
previous accusations. She does not do, she told us in a New York Times interview, I'm a dolphin, not a shark, that she likes to stay up late at night and Google fashion brands to find the fashion brands that
yeah.
align with her that she invests in. Do you Google anything else? Like serious answers only.
Well, you could presumably find out if you're thinking of calling something Pearl, and this book has been written by, and I think has reasonably sold well in various
It's
territories. You
translated
would,
into different countries,
yeah,
yeah, and
and you could
languages.
Google Pearl with power, and is there something similar out there? Just put that in, and you probably would have come up and said, well, then perhaps I better call it something else. So therefore, once again, well, actually, in the end, obviously Netflix looked at it and said, well, it probably might be a bit dull because they dropped it,
Not worth the
even though I
hassle.
think, and that. But again, it must be frustrating. But it's another thing that just shows that, she goes off and doesn't actually think about it and doesn't think about the consequences of her actions and think she's above, beyond reproach. And she's not. She's the same as anybody else. And these are some of the lessons that she should be learning from in her podcast from her successful female founders, as you know, the due diligence that various one or two of them have done to set up, whether it be Bumble or whatever other things that they've set up. I bet they had to go through every legal plan framework to make sure that everything was in order. I don't think she does that enough. She just sort of thinks, well, I'm Meghan, I'm the Duchess of Sussex, and well, I can get away with it. I
I'm
think,
gonna bulldoze. Like
yeah.
that's what I
Oh,
get. I keep explaining it this way with because one of my girlfriends, um, she's a celebrity and she is like one of Bravo's biggest stars. That's this channel here that pumps out like the most iconic reality shows ever. And she messaged me a link to a friend of King Charles's that was talking about kind of dismissively about Meghan's lifestyle brand, saying, it's taken me a decade to know how to do this and this and this and this. And she's a woman that lives on an estate and runs, has a similar business. And I said Meghan doesn't care. She's just bulldozing her way into these industries because she knows deep down that it's her title that gets her, like you said a few minutes ago, her title gets her in the door, and she thinks she can break the rules. She thinks the rules don't apply to her because of her title, because of her vague association with the British royal family. That there was an executive here in LA that spoke to the Daily Beast that said, it's becoming quite clear that these two are no longer associated with the British royal family. The magic is running thin, because that was the only thing that we were interested in here in Hollywood. And maybe to that point, that's this desperation that Tom Bower speaks of, this anxiousness that Tom Bower speaks of, and this anxiety that we feel of them just dropping all of these projects on the world at once.
well, and this is the problem for them, because their star, I feel, is definitely in the wane, because Harry is completely cut off from his family. So he's in royal family in name only because he's the brother of the future king. Otherwise, he is just an ordinary citizen now. He lives in America as an ordinary citizen.
He's a resident. He's a resident.
He's a resident. He's a resident now, trying to eke out a living, but he doesn't know how to. He doesn't know what to do. He's not prepared to go and do a 9 to 5 job. If moved to America, well, what are you going to do? Well, because he just thinks that air of self-entitlement. Meghan's got the same, thinks that whatever she does is going to be absolute brilliant, doesn't listen to people to advise her. We've talked about Jason Knopf, one of the people who tried to give her advice, and people say, this is how you behave. We've also been hearing about the way she treats people. There's even an article come out, I read somewhere today, that we're finding out that Meghan was berating some gardener and the Queen had to intervene. So just generally her bully behavior through all the sort of thinking she knows best. It's floundering. But yes, she will make money. There will be some people supporting her, and we've got to accept that. But it's not in the level. If you've got people in America saying their brand is a little bit toxic, then you have a problem. Because
and to your point, Prince Harry and Better Up, Prince Harry's been with Better Up since they stepped down from the British royal family, and the toxicity brand, or the toxicity narrative, has grown so fiercely over the last few years. If I were Prince Harry with Better Up, I would be breaking my back to contribute in a way that was so meaningful that I had people at Better Up going to other people in Silicon Valley, you got to get this guy on board. He's helping us out. He's done this for us. He's brilliant. He introduced us to these people. He's opened these doors for us. But again, he just flounders. He's just sitting back collecting a paycheck. Occasionally he'll do an online video for these people, and it's like, to your point, what the heck is he doing? Not enough.
Because when he makes these statements, you look at what he may be feeling, but then you actually have to take it outside his little bubble. He may be feeling the victim at times, but there have been people affected by his actions. So
Hmm.
it's an all-round, and this is the problem for brand Sussex. It's got it's it's sort of in its own floundering in its own sort of bog.
Yeah.
Uh, they're looking for air and looking for a direction. And for Harry, he doesn't know where to go. And I have a degree of sadness for him because he's 40 and he's got the rest of his life in front of him. He's got his children, but is he truly happy with where it's gone? Because if he was still um, able to be in the royal family, he'd be doing every Sentebale wouldn't probably have a problem. Would be
Nope.
earning lots of money. He'd be slipping over the Invictus Games. Would be happy because there would have been the royal infrastructure to help
His
him.
his
Uh,
babies would have been playing with their cousins this
yeah,
Easter Sunday.
and it would have all been happy days. But unfortunately, that ship has sailed so far over the sunset, into the sunset, that it's not going to happen. And it is. But what everyone can see it except for those
Those
two in
two.
Montecito,
Yeah.
those two, and
Uh,
that is the problem.
I'll ask you this question before I let you go. Do you feel like we forgive and forget with politicians more so than we do with Harry and Meghan? Because it does feel like we hold these two accountable. Part of the reason why they keep hiccuping is because we have receipts from 2 and 3 years ago of things that they said. And or we can go, well, that's interesting that you said that they've affected your mental health. Here's page 73 of Spare, where you said this, which probably upset the Princess of Wales. When you said that about how Prince Harry is trying to talk about mental health, but also does things that negatively affect people's mental health, I wondered, are we harder on these guys than we are on some of the politicians in our lives?
Um, that's a good question, but they create the problem for us to because they're by their actions they create a further narrative that is a negative one.
Mm-hmm.
And therein lies the problem. I mean, it's even now like when this court case that he comes back, he says there's no police protection. Well, if he comes back to England, he could stay in the Royal Palace, Buckingham Palace or somewhere, where there would be all the protection. Yet he decides to stay in a hotel where they probably have he's got a, and you think, why can't he just stay in Kensington Palace? Because all the protection and would be safe. So there's an awful lot of confusion in his world. And so he creates the negativity. He does not help himself. So yes, we're probably, overly hard. Politicians need all the scrutiny they can get, and quite rightly so. Should he be getting all the scrutiny? Well, from a British perspective, he inflicts a degree of frustration on members of the royal family by their actions. And as I say, they put themselves in the spotlight by their actions. And yes, we are probably hard on them, but they are creating the difficulty for themselves. No one else. It's
Yeah.
we're picking up on their narrative. No one else is.
Yeah, their contradictions, their
Mm.
hypocrisy. Yeah. All right. I'd agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Rupert, no one else I'd rather spend my Easter Sunday with.
Well, it's been an absolute joy. I'm off to Ireland tomorrow because that's where and I'm off to go and hack around a famous golf course in Ireland.
Oh
So
my gosh, I'm so jealous. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's
and the
beautiful.
most important thing is my team won yesterday as well. So
I saw
it's
the
been a good.
picture of you. You were so
Yeah,
victorious on
well,
Instagram.
it was a happy days, but I was about 10 seats away from where Prince William normally sits. But there we go. So I had some nice hospitality. But yes, happy Easter to you. And I think we're probably talking to you next week after I've hacked around Portrush in Ireland.
I love it. I'll talk to you again so soon. Thanks, Rupert. Bye.